I noted that you authored 2 books. Your first book, Organ Gold, published already in 2018, was about illegal sale of human organs on the dark web, also a technology that is misused to some degree, right? Is this book based on facts?
Yes, the book is based on facts because if you see the numbers, the market for the sale of human organs illegally is about $1 billion. That's because there is such a massive shortage of legally procured organs, especially organs like kidneys, for instance, corneas, and some organs which are definitely very hard to get, such as the heart. So a huge network of bad actors, we may call them, brokers, hospitals, doctors, transplant surgeons have cropped up in various places around the world to cater to this population of rich people who need an organ and are not willing to wait and go on dialysis for years. The average waiting time for a kidney in Singapore is 9 years. The average waiting time for a kidney in the United States is 7 years. So if you have the money and you don't have the patience, there are people who will procure an illegal organ for you and carry out the operation in a fairly decent hospital, in a fairly decent country around the world. So that's the basis of that book.
So there's a perspective that we all have to keep in mind. When we develop artificial intelligence algorithms, we are providing incredibly powerful tools that can also be abused, right? So we have seen generative AI creating awesome pictures. Now, if you want to start a company and you need a logo, you can just talk to an artificial intelligence system and it creates an amazing logo for you. If you need pictures for a presentation, it can create awesome pictures for you. If you are in a movie studio and want to create a very realistic movie, you don't need anymore that big budgets for the visual effects. An artificial intelligence system can deliver to some degree. But of course, this can be abused. We have seen the impact of fake news. We have seen the impact of identity thefts, right? Where deepfakes were produced that sounded like an original, and it was very hard for the, let's say, average observer to tell that it's not the person. And this perspective, I think, to look at what can be the harm of technology, we should have that in mind for artificial intelligence as well. So you have a really great perspective on what harms can come from technology abuse. We have seen that in your first book, but correct me if I'm wrong, you have even a second book, The Singapore Strain, which you just published by Penguin. It's about an undiscovered strain of COVID-19 that you speculate could be engineered by AI. Is it now in the realm of conspiracy theories, or do you think that could have happened?
The book is what we call speculative fiction. And it imagines a world where there is a new strain which is undiscovered, which originates in Singapore, and it has potentially infected 12 million people around the world. What it does is it changes their DNA to make them more environmentally aware and become militants in the process. So look at it from the AI perspective. If AI is looking at Earth and looking at the entire repository of knowledge that's available on the internet and is digesting it now, and you take all of the AI, all of the LLMs together, digesting all of this information and coming to the conclusion that humans are the negative effects on Earth. They are the ones who have gone to war, raped and killed each other, decimated most other species and biodiversity and habitats, polluted the entire world, overfished the oceans, cluttered outer space, and lived very greedy lives. So if an AI is looking in as an outsider and it says, what should I do to make Earth more livable and more green and more biodiverse, it will come to the conclusion that humans are the biggest pests and therefore need to be decimated. That's the underlying premise of the book.
That is a very dystopian view, but in fact, a real concern. I mean, we have seen how powerful artificial intelligence can be, right? I mean, AlphaFold solving problems that would have taken a long time without this technology.
So my point is, see, until now, you needed human interception for all technologies to behave the way humans wanted it to behave. For the first time, we have a technology that doesn't need human intervention, that can think for itself.
Well, that comes to what we refer to as the alignment problem.
That's right.
That we need to express to the artificial intelligence what its objectives are. So I'm having a bit of a more moderate view over here, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm always here to learn a few things. Artificial intelligence has the capacity to learn from data. And of course, the data can be created by itself. But we pay all those AI engineers because actually doesn't learn by itself. There's always a person that switches it on, tells its objective. This bootstrapping of that process is human controlled. And there we need to be very careful on what path we send this artificial intelligence system. What is the asymptotic behavior of that system? We have seen where good intentions can turn very bad, where, let's say, fairness, equity have been well meant, but then turned out to be incorrect. I mean, for example, there was an AI system, if you recall, when you asked to generate pictures of the founding fathers of the US, it came up with a very diverse set of figures which had no resemblance in the actual history, right? So if we care about equity, inclusion, if we care about living standards that we all thrive, we have to make sure that AI doesn't misunderstand. Right, that we have an alignment with the objectives of these systems. What do you think can be done to solve that problem?
I think at this current state where AI is just evolving and LLMs have just started, it's been just 2 years since they started. That GPT came out on November 2022, for instance. So it's early days, but look at 5 years from now or 3 years from now. Given the rapid change at which AI is learning, and this is all unsupervised learning, so there's no human involvement in what AI is learning, and it's coming to its own conclusions. So why do you think AI will behave the way we want it to behave? Who is going to pull the plug on AI, especially AGI, artificial general intelligence, when the system thinks for itself and comes to its own conclusion without human intervention? And it's learning and feeding off other large LLMs. And with the vast repository of data available on the internet, including historical data. So it's coming to its own conclusions. And I don't think any human would even have the capacity or the technology or the capability to pull the plug and say, stop, don't kill us. If you go to YouTube and look at a video on Sophia, the first AI intelligent robot manufactured by Danson, and you see Mr. Danson asking Sophia the robot on live television, will you kill all humans? Is it a good idea? And Sophia, remember, Sophia has no sense of humor. She replies very directly, saying, yes, it's a good idea to kill all humans. And I think that's the end game that we are going towards.
It's a good point that we can paint those existential threats. So artificial intelligence may pose one of those existential threats to humanity, indeed, so we need to be careful. To the average organization that adopts a small sliver of it, it might be too far out. If I have a chatbot that helps me transcribing meeting minutes, summarizing my action items is one thing. If I have an AI that forecasts my financials into next quarter, if I have an AI that helps me control my machine to some degree, predictive maintenance, use cases for every function in an organization that might not pose such existential threats. So in that sense, we have this balance somehow to make. On the one hand, yes, AI can be very, very dangerous. But on the other hand, there's also a lot of benign uses which enable productivity, efficiency, and so on. And in that tangent field, one of the legislative regions that has pushed forward is the European Union with the AI Act. So it has been bashed. On one side, it's too restrictive, stifles innovation, doesn't help at all. And on the other hand, we see how dangerous AI can be, and then we're asking ourselves, how can such a dangerous technology be unregulated? So where do you see that playing out? Would you say the EU AI Act is too harsh or not harsh enough?
I think AI Act is a start, and the reason for AI Act coming into effect in the first place is because without government regulation or oversight, you cannot expect commercial companies with a profit motive to take an active role in regulating their AI or in protecting people's privacy. So the GDPR is a good example that you needed GDPR to ensure that companies don't misuse personal data, especially of Europeans, right? And we have the PDPC in Singapore, for instance. But do the large conglomerates who now control massive technology, AI, for instance, the top 5 companies that control all of the major AI LLMs, do they really care about your personal data or privacy? Or are they more focused on generating more revenue and more profits? So you need a government oversight. Otherwise, how do you protect the vulnerable? So from Singapore's point of view, even though we have decided that there would be no overarching regulation such as the EU AI Act, because it stifles innovation, as you correctly said, we have enough other regulations in place to ensure that your data is protected, that AI does not do harm to you, that companies will not misuse your data to sell something that you don't need or push financial products that are beyond your scope of understanding, or even generate fake news that cannot be stopped. So I think the EU AI Act is a good start, and you see more countries now looking seriously at it. For instance, Australia has come out with a regulation that will curtail social media coverage for those below 16 from 1st of next year or 1st August or something. Singapore is also considering something along the same lines because we cannot expect self-regulation by the large conglomerates.
I think you made a very good example here with the GDPR. I think the regulation was awesome for individuals. We don't have the same power as big tech companies, but with such a regulation, we have a leg to stand on to defend ourselves. And GDPR, luckily, had a global impact. So very similar regulations are now in place globally. Would you expect AI regulation to be the same?
Yes, I expect at least AI regulation to wake up people in the large companies or those developing AI or deploying AI to step back and ask themselves this question: hey, what safeguards do I have in place? What standards am I complying with? What feedback mechanisms do I have already built in so that those who are impacted can come and let us know that they have been adversely, wrongly impacted, and we can take corrective action. Now, without a regulation like the EU AI Act, none of this would be even put on the table. And you have also seen, for instance, companies that despite people saying that they have allowed the platform to host fake news, they have not deleted them. So Singapore, for instance, is probably coming out with a new regulation called the Data Privacy Act. I'm going to read from this advisory that I just received. By the end of June, all Facebook advertisers will need to verify their identities by uploading their government-issued ID. Mandatory verification for all advertisers comes on the heels of a 12% increase in reports about scam advertisements on Facebook from June to December 2024. So, you see, the reason for all of these regulations or guardrails becoming hardened, I mean, when a guideline or a guardrail is hardened, it becomes regulation. So the reason for that is because of the inability of these large companies to self-regulate. And we are dealing with human lives, human emotions, human identities, human personalities and dignities in such cases. So I think regulation is something that most countries will be considering going forward.
And that is actually bringing also our conversation nicely full circle, because we started out with recognizing that artificial intelligence poses an international challenge. Every country is impacted by that, and they all have different approaches to it. but we need to protect the individuals, the citizens. And we have seen a couple of examples where different approaches are being taken. For example, the European Union with a very strict legislation, or Singapore with a more balanced approach of strong guidance of what regulations, what organizations should consider. Now, in that tension field, I would say regulations or guidance documents are very helpful tools for organizations. They don't have to figure out everything by themselves. Those guidance documents, standards, even legislation are the product of plenty of experts sitting together and figuring out a way to deal with such risks. And for me, that is quite heartening to see that organizations can now take those guidance and advice to move forward with artificial intelligence without having a cataclysmic problem that might endanger their business model, might endanger their customers, or even have a larger societal impact. So those bodies of knowledge are very useful. Now, of course, the next step is to be aware that those exist and being able to translate that into your own corporate strategy, figuring out what is relevant for you and how do you move forward with that. So I think there, also from a Singapore perspective, it has been moving forward quite a bit. And there are new guidance documents coming out very soon, as you mentioned. I'm looking forward to see that. And maybe we will have a second discussion once we have those texts available to us.
Sure.
So maybe to close off also our discussion, with having all this information available, what advice would you now give to organizations to move forward?
I would say, look at it ABC. A is awareness that the technology is very strong and powerful and can do as much harm as it can do good. Number 2 is be prepared with all of the guidelines, the guardrails, and regulations that are in place so that you are well equipped to secure yourself in case of any mishap or misstep of the AI that you have put out in the market. And C is collaborate. Collaborate with your bank, for instance, so that your customers are safe. Collaborate with companies like, associations like SCS, which have got chapters on AI and robotics and AI ethics and governance as well as cybersecurity. And collaborate with the government, like say, use the tools from AI Verify, Project Moonshot, because compliance and collaboration go hand in hand. For example, there are ISO standards like 42,000, which are specific to how AI ethics and governance can be deployed in your organization. And there are compliance guidelines like the AI ethics and governance body of knowledge, which is endorsed by the government of Singapore and which you can deploy to your advantage. And these don't cost money. So why not use the tools and techniques available and secure not just yourself, but your customers as well? That's my humble piece of advice.
Raju, thank you so much for this conversation. And I think you closed this discussion on a very nice note, the note of collaboration. In fact, all of those advice and guidance is not a top-down dictation. It asks every expert in the field to chime in. Those standards are a collaborative effort. National bodies and their experts come together and they encourage participation. There are plenty of initiatives also launched by Singapore that wants the feedback, invites the feedback of organizations, of technical experts, of users of artificial intelligence. So collaboration is really key on how we want to live with artificial intelligence going forward. Raju, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I think I learned a lot myself during this conversation. And also big thanks to our loyal listeners, to the existing ones and new ones.
Thank you, Martin. It's been a pleasure and I wish you well.